Hey there, and welcome to part 3 of my sort of tutorial in progress as I work through issues dealing with 2D sprite-based games in Unity 3D using the excellent TK2D or 2D Toolkit library that is available in the Unity Asset Store. All right, by Unicron Software, by the way. Okay, so I've made a good amount of progress since last time, so I'm pretty happy with that. Here's what's going on now. Let me just quickly show it to you, and I won't talk, and then... Okay, so there's actually a lot going on, a lot of differences since last time. I'm going to try to highlight the big ones. Obviously, I changed the room to be made out of these sprite squares instead of those scaled, thin things that I had before. I have replaced, well, the other guys still exist, but for right now, the new exciting thing is this animated sprite. I grabbed a Richter Belmont sprite off the sprite library. And he's doing a bunch of things, and collisions are working on them. So yeah, I mean, there are just like 5 different key elements here going on at the same time. Well, one thing, real quick, I changed my animation, my motion all to be based on time rather than frames. That way, if the frame rate goes down, everything still moves the right amount. Okay, so I'm going to try to walk through this, and I'll probably play it in a loop a couple times describing different things that are going on and the difficulties that I encountered. So first of all, you can see when he drops, he goes into a dropping pose. Every time he lands, he does an attack, and then he does a walk animation. So here he drops, does an attack animation. His whip, or actually it's a flail, I think, with this version, hits the wall, and that is a collision detected, so he's reversing direction just like he does here. Now, let's talk about some of the elements that were troublesome. So first of all, as you can recall, and here, I'll just activate this guy, I had everything working pretty well. Oh boy, that wasn't supposed to happen, but you know what? That guy's kind of jammed in there, so I'm not too worried. Let's try a different guy. Here we go. So I had everything working pretty well with static sprites, but I obviously want to have animated sprites. So that turned out to be a fairly big challenge because there are lots of things you need to do differently. So I had set up, for example, my collision caching all based on static sprites, so that, you know, I had one set of mesh to do collision against. But of course, this guy, Richter here, is changing constantly. You know, when his whip is out, I want to do collision detection against the whip, not against just his body. Now, of course, when it comes time to do the actual the game, I'm going to do weapons as a separate sprite so that I can detect weapon hit versus you know, body hit. But let's ignore that for the moment. So how did I have to go about this? Well, first of all, let's just take a look at the sprite collection. So here we have like the attack sprites. Let me just custom. Okay, there we go. So I set custom anchor points. Oh, and for some reason you have to reselect this to get everything to work. So I set custom anchor points, which are, oh, it's going to make, you can only see one or the other. Okay, so either anchor points or polygons. So here are the polygons you can see. Okay. And then here are the anchor points. So the anchor points are key because you'll see the whip is behind him. And previously I was doing lower left anchored stuff. But for example, here, the sprite, his foot is in the lower left. But here, you've got all this space over here. So anchor points on his left foot, and that keeps him looking planted. So if I made him stop moving, it would look good. So obviously you saw that I had polygons, separate polygon collision shapes for each of the sprites, each of the frames of the animation. But the problem was that when I got it all working together, it wasn't using them. Now, there are two reasons for that. First of all, so I created this, previously I had just the collision cache, now I've got a collision cache holder, and there's a bit of commented out code here that you need to ignore, but the key elements here are that when you want to figure out what frame he's on, you do this to get the animated sprite, and then you get the current sprite def, and I'm using the name to key off of a hash map, a dictionary. To get the collider cache, which is the object I use that actually has the vertex and triangle information for his collision shapes, and that's where the collision happens. But, so that took a little while to figure out, and just so you can see what I'm building off of, you want the collider vertices off of the sprite definition, and you want one of the indices. Now this is nice. I've capped them front and back, the mesh in TK2D. I don't know if you need to, but if you do, either way, anyway, I've used just the front mesh because that's all you need to do. But this defines the triangles, and this defines the indices of the polygon. And that's how I build my collision caches. Now, there was still a problem, and I can show you how that problem was working. I believe, oh no, I did delete but I can still show it to you. So, clicking on gizmos, you can see bounding boxes. So, what was happening here, you can see every time he uses his whip, the bounding box grows, and that's awesome. But originally it wasn't working that way because I was using, for collision, not just in terms of drawing, I was using the collider's bounding box, which in the 2D Toolkit, for some reason, on animated sprites, doesn't change. There's just one bounding box. So watch this. He's doing his thing, but his bounding box isn't changing. And what was happening was he'd whip into the wall, and it wouldn't bounce like that. He would just keep going until this box hit it. And the reason for that is that even though I'm using polygon, specific collision detection, I'm only doing it if the bounding box hits. Because a bounding box check is a very cheap and easy way to do to ask, hey, should we bother doing the detailed check, the expensive check? So what I had to do was I changed everything to use the renderer bounds instead of the collider bounds, and that is essential. I don't know why the collider bounds don't change, but doesn't matter. I've got my solution. Renderer bounds is the answer. Okay. What else have I done here? I think the only other minor thing you can see right here. Let's turn off the boundary. So this looks like a mess, but it's intentional. The reason for that was I've sort of evolved this by throwing junk at it and seeing what problems happen and then trying to solve them. Because I have created a small amount of unit test, but for the collision stuff, but there's really no way to really simulate this whole world situation and all the things that could possibly be running into each other without just doing it. So here we have this gap, and the idea is that his foot is on this ledge here, so he's still at the higher level, and then he's going to step off, and he falls for just a moment, but he's going to land on this triangle. Oh, sorry, he's not landing on the triangle. He does land on this, but the triangle is 9 pixels above, and I have made it so that he's allowed to step up to 9 pixels, and that's just arbitrary, and I'm sure it'll change based on the individual character, but it's something for the test here. So here you can see he'll step up, and that worked. And the reason he doesn't step up here when he bumps into, for example, this triangle on the left is that the top is more than 9 pixels. So I think that actually might wrap up everything I've done. Once again, I've sort of flown through everything. Oh, let's just quickly look at the animation code. I've got a couple different things. This is just, again, test code. But basically what it's saying is if he's dropping, then play the jump down animation if it's not already playing. You have to do this. I have to cache which animation is running because, excuse me, if I don't, And if I don't check against it, it just keeps restarting it from the beginning. So here, if no animation is playing, I told him to do a walk animation. And finally, here, if his current animation is jump down, meaning if he's falling, and if this has not triggered, meaning his y velocity is not less than 0, then he must have landed, and therefore he plays the attack animation. So anyway, that's basically how it works. I'm trying to think if there's anything else major that I've done, and I don't think there is. So that's the key thing. Animated collision detection is now working. It's working great. And you just need to remember to use the renderer collider bounds. And you need to get build your collider cache off of the sprite definition, and that'll do the trick. The other thing I've done here is the collider cache is no longer a mono behavior because it doesn't need to be. The collider cache holder is, and I just give the collider cache a game object, and it can do everything it needs based on that game object. For example, finding the coordinates, the position. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. And oh, you know what? I just noticed something that I'm probably gonna have to change here. When I flip characters around, right now it's using the collider bound center. I'm probably going to have to change that to the renderer bound center, so I'll play with that. So until next time, feel free to ask questions if you have any, because I'm happy to answer them, and hopefully we'll make some good progress and get the real game going pretty darn soon, because I think this is pretty much in a state of completion.